Welcome back to Rich Words Music. It's the end of the year that has been 2024, and that means it's time for the 4th annual traditional roundup of the best guitar gear with my very special guest. It's Mr. Leigh Fuge. Thanks for coming back again.
Thanks for having me back. It's always a good highlight of the year to get on these calls with you and talk about what's gone on in the last 12 months.
It is. It's always a lot of fun, and I always learn a lot, and I think the people at home watching this will learn a lot as well, because we both play quite a lot of different gear over the course of a year as well. So we're like telling each other what we found and giving each other tips for next year as well. So always fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting to find out what other people have kind of been inspired by over the last 12 months as well.
Yeah, exactly. So before we kick in with the gear then, how has 2024 been for you? Good year, bad year, average year?
It's been pretty good, to be fair. Yeah, it's been a busy year. I've clocked up a lot of miles on tour. I've been very busy with the YouTube stuff, very busy with, everything really. Just life has been busy this year, which is, not a terrible problem to have.
Yeah, you've picked up a lot of YouTube subs this year, but I would recommend to anyone watching this who doesn't follow Leigh on Instagram, follow him there. And in particular, if you have an interest in kind of the architecture of British theatres, because you're playing a lot of gigs in large theatres. You're on the pro theatre circuit, many times a week or whatever, and there are some great images to look at there. Very interesting.
Yeah, some of the venues, I'm very lucky to play some of these venues, but one thing I noticed pretty early on when I started doing that stuff is that those venues make for really good gear photo backdrops. If you've got like a nice guitar or whatever and you can put it in a nice theatre, it makes a really good Instagram backdrop. So for anyone who wants to get into pro gear photography, go take some photos in theatres because it always looks really good.
Go to venues, yeah. The pics of like a pedal board and a guitar with the seats, like the empty seats during sound check, like rising up and beyond. It looks impressive. I'm sure it would look even more impressive when it's full later on, but it's like a bit more difficult to take pics when you're rocking the stage.
Yeah. Hang on, guys. Let me just take this Instagram picture.
Yeah. Oh well. So anyway, follow Leigh if you don't already. Links to everything are going to be down in the description as usual. But let's kick on straight away with the gear then. And as usual, I guess we'll start with electric guitars. Is there a single electric guitar this year that's really floated your boat that you want to tell us about?
There's been a couple. This has been a really good year for budget-friendly electrics for me. I found a couple of really cool gems in the sort of sub £350 kind of region. But I'm going to start on the higher end of things with this thing.
Ooh.
This is probably my favorite guitar I've played this year from like a new brand perspective so far. And this is a B&G Little Sister. And
okay.
Are you familiar with the B&G brand?
When you picked it up, it rang kind of a bell with me. And now you've said B&G Little Sister, that rings a bell as well, but I'm actually not sure if I'm familiar with them or not. I know that I've seen a couple of other not too dissimilar looking guitars in that kind of ES Les Paul sort of a vein, but maybe there are other brands. I'll have to have a look afterwards. But tell us about this one.
So B&G are a company from Israel. They've got a custom shop there, and they do, all the custom shop guitars are sort of like, as you can imagine, custom shop prices, $3,000 plus $4,000, $5,000, and so on. This is from a series they have called the Crossroads series, which is actually manufactured, I think, in China. And they're still not cheap guitars, but I think these retail probably $1,300, $1,400. So they're cheaper than the custom shop ones, but they're still not obviously super affordable guitars. Yeah. But what I like about this is it's kind of a cross between a bunch of different things I like. I like semi-hollow guitars. I love P90s. I like tailpieces, so it's kind of got all of that in one. And also, it's the first guitar I've owned with a slotted headstock. Which I always wanted a guitar with a slotted headstock because I just think they look really cool. So yeah, this has been a bit of a personal favourite of the year. I've played this one a lot. It took me a little bit of getting used to because it's got a really fat neck on it with a V profile.
That's interesting. So like almost an acoustic guitar sort of a neck sort of thing, which fits with that slotted headstock as well.
Yeah, so I don't own a guitar other than this with a V profile neck. So it was a bit of a learning curve because you can really feel the kind of the tip of the V, and it's a very chunky neck. But once I got used to it, it kind of, felt sort of second nature really. But yeah, it's got a really cool vibe. It's not the, choose my words carefully. It's not the easiest guitar to play in the sense of like, you're not playing like a super shreddy thing. It makes you work for a little bit, but it's got a really good vibe to it, and it's quite a fun guitar to play. If you play kind of like blues or classic rock stuff, it's got a lot of vibe to it, and it's quite inspiring to play, I think.
Yeah. What pickups are in that?
They are their own in-house brand, I believe. They make them all themselves. Okay. You can, because the Crossroads stuff is so good, what they actually offer as well is you can buy like an upgrade pack from their website where you can buy the custom shop pickups and the custom shop wiring harness, and you can fit all that to the sort of the lower priced models as well and take them up a step. But yeah, I think the pickups are their own brand. I don't think they're using anything kind of like a name brand or whatever.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
they were not like B&G as a brand. Actually, I guess not on my radar at all. I just did a little Google search while you were talking, and you're familiar with Maybach guitars, right? They have a model called the Little Wing,
yes,
which is not exactly the same as this, but similar sort of ballpark sort of a model, or you can get it in a similar ballpark sort of a way.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, they're very interesting guitars. The Maybach also has a slotted headstock, and I think I've seen one in person but never played one. But I would be very interested to, and I would be really interested to get to know that neck, like a thicker neck with a V-shaped profile. It is quite rare these days.
Yeah, this is actually available in a shape similar to the Maybach as well, where this cutaway isn't there, so you can get that one that's kind of like almost like an acoustic guitar shape, but in an electric guitar form. I can't remember if it's got a different name, but you can also get this with humbuckers as well, which is called the Stepsister. This is the little sister, and it's available with humbuckers as well, which I think is the Stepsister.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And you say price-wise about $1,200-1,300 for that standard range?
Something like that. It's around that kind of ballpark. The other thing that took me a little bit of getting used to is it actually only has 20 frets.
Yeah.
So if you're playing right up here a lot, this probably isn't the right model for you, but that's where the Stepsister comes in, because that actually has the 22 frets.
Yeah.
It's still a full scale, but because the bridge is so far back, they took some of the frets out to kind of compensate for it. But yeah, it's a cool guitar. It's different as well. It's different to anything else I own, which is something I like.
Yeah, exactly. It is definitely a statement as well. It's got like, black with gold. It's kind of like a tiny bit blingy, but not too blingy at all. And obviously with the headstock being very different to anything else, it's going to be an eye catcher for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah,
great first choice. Well, I will go for my first choice now, and I'm just looking around.
I always look forward to your choices, because you always have some really interesting choices.
Do you? Oh, sorry, this one's still got my strap on it. But this is the guitar that has sort of changed my expectations this year, and we chatted about it before we started recording this. This is the 2024 Ibanez Iceman IC420, which is, I guess, one of the most affordable Iceman or Icemen models out there. It's made in China, and that accounts for a lot of it, I guess. And these will set you back about, I think, 799 euros over here in mainland Europe, something like that. But I mean, everyone knows the Iceman guitar model. For me personally, I was a huge System of a Down fan as a kid. I still am, kind of. And Darren Malakian, the guitar player from System of a Down, often played an Iceman guitar. And, well, I always associated them with very heavy kinds of metal music, and looking at it, it looks like a sort of a shred guitar and a riffer's guitar, but this guitar will pretty much do everything. It's huge as well, so it's a totally different experience to hold it compared to, a Les Paul or a Telly or anything in the more traditional sense. But it's designed in a way that it really fits. It's got Ibanez's Super 80 humbucker pickups in it, which sound amazing. They're not just for shred, they're not just for metal, they sound great for clean stuff as well. It's a really versatile guitar. It's got a lovely neck on it. And I think Henning Pauly did a video on it saying that this is the best Les Paul that you can buy for under $1,000 or €1,000 or whatever. Because it kind of does that thing, 2 humbuckers, volume and tone control for each pickup, 3-way selector switch, mahogany neck. Is it mahogany neck? I've got to double check that because I don't think it is.
Has it got has it got coil splits and stuff like that, or is it just straight to the point?
No. Yeah, straight to the point. No coil splits or anything like that. I'm just looking at the specs to see. The body is a Kume and the neck is also a Kume, but it's like, that's a mahogany-esque wood. So it's that kind of ballpark. So it does that LP thing, but I actually think in a way it's closer to an SG in the way it performs. It just has a slight sort of crispness to it and a little bit less weight behind it than a Les Paul would. But anyway, it's a fantastic guitar. Totally blew away and exceeded all of my expectations that I would have had for it. And this guitar came out in January 2024 and I've still got it. And that says a lot. I haven't been able to send it back to Ibanez for that reason. So fantastic guitar. Totally different to what you've just shown, but also a wonderful option.
I really want an Iceman guitar because I'm a big Kiss fan. So for me, that...
Yeah.
I know, I of course remember the System of a Down link because I remember when they first came out, Darren was playing those a lot. But for me, it's always been Paul Stanley.
Yeah.
Like, that's... Even though he's played a load of guitars over the years, he's come back to Ibanez. So for me, the Iceman has always been closely associated with Kiss as well. And they're a band I love. So, yeah, I've always wanted one just for that reason, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Paul Stanley is one of the others who's associated with them. I was at the German Ibanez HQ the other week, and yeah, there was some Paul Stanley stuff there. Real cool stuff, real sleazy glam rock kind of guitars. They just fit for that kind of thing. That's why the strap's on this guitar, by the way, because quite often I'll play sat down in this little studio room I've got here, but with the Iceman, you just want to pick it up, stand up, and just kind of rock out a bit.
Throw a couple of shapes.
Yeah, I mean, you got to with a guitar like this. It's kind of like a Flying V, right? I mean, you can play them sat down and they're comfy enough to do it, but who's buying one of those guitars to play it sat down? That's the way I look at it. So yeah, that's my choice number one. It's the Ibanez IC420 Iceman. Any other guitars for you to showcase?
Yeah, so I've got two other guitars that were kind of very interesting ones for me this year. One of which... We'll stick with the slightly more aggressive guitar theme, and I'm going to talk about this thing. So this is actually kind of the polar opposite to the guitar that I just showed, really, because this is a Harley Benton. This is the I get the model number right here. I think it's the SC Custom 3, or is it the SC3 Custom? I can't remember which way that round, or which kind of order the words are. But this is another black and gold guitar, but this one's got 24 frets and active pickups. So tonally the polar opposite to the B&G.
Yeah.
This guitar is one this year that's really, really impressed me. These come in at like under 250 quid. And I kind of feel like I say this every year, but this is, to date, this is the best Harley Benton I've ever played.
Really?
I genuinely feel like every single year that passes, the quality of the stuff they put out increases exponentially. So this one has got like stainless steel frets. The fret ends are rounded as well. So this is probably the best. I'm going to go as far as to say not even the best fret job I felt on an affordable guitar, but the best fret job I felt on a guitar under £1,000. Even though this is a guitar that's under £300.
Yeah.
The fret job on this, like if you handed me this and told me this guitar was £750, £800, I genuinely wouldn't question it. So yeah, this has been a very, very impressive one this year for me, and I've used this quite a lot. It's quite different to anything else that I normally have as well. This year I've gotten into playing some more high gain stuff, and I kind of realized I needed something that could give me a bit more of that as well. So this has kind of filled a nice gap in my collection too.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of a guitar that just looking at it, I would associate it with heavier styles, and having the active humbuckers as well. They're not EMGs, are they?
No, they are. They're Teslas, but you can get this with EMGs for like I think it's like a £60 upcharge or whatever. It's not
right.
much.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, guitars like that, I'm guessing it's got coil splits and stuff in it, so it's going to be suited to all sorts of styles of music, right?
Straight to the point, 3-way switch,
Really?
2 humbuckers, 2 volumes and a tone. That's
Wow, okay, I'm surprised, but still, like...
no clean tones here, just...
No?
But no,
Okay.
it's a great guitar.
I stand corrected.
The pickups are really dynamic. I've not actually had any active pickups before. And I always had this idea in my head of what I thought active pickups were going to be. And I was actually surprisingly wrong about that, because these are actually much more usable than I imagined they would be. I always just thought active pickups just sound one way, but apparently not. Apparently they're very good for a lot of different things.
Yeah, I think they are. But it's like you say, because there's a certain kind of player who's often in certain kinds of genres using active pickups more so than maybe anybody else. Like, you think they're just suited to, crushing high gain metal, stuff like that, but they're really not. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, these are fantastic. Really well put together, like feels great, sounds great. Comes with, Grover tuners.
Yeah.
So they haven't really spared any expense on this considering the price either, which is nice.
It's, like you said, it feels like Harley Benton gets exponentially better year on year, and the kind of specs that they're able to build into certain guitars is it's just crazy. And the next guitar that I would want to show is also a Harley Benton, and it's an even more affordable one. This is the ST Modern, and this is 179 euros. So in the UK, I guess £150, something like that.
Are they really that cheap? I always thought they were like over £200.
So earlier this year, last year at Guitar Summit, Harley Benton launched the ST Modern Plus, which is about 450 euros. And that had more bling, more frills, more specs and features packed into it than this one. This is kind of a streamlined, stripped back version of that guitar. This is the ST Modern. You can pay more for the Plus. But the Modern, I mean, if I tell you some of the specs and then you didn't know the price, and I said, how much do you think it would cost? You'd definitely say it cost at least twice as much as what it costs. So on this, you get like this really nice roasted maple neck. The frets are not stainless steel; those are stainless steel on the Plus, but they've been done really well, really nice and smooth. And I don't think Harley Benton ever tweaks guitars before they send them to me. I know for some YouTubers they would, but for me, I always try and make sure I get something that anybody would get if they just placed an order. So frets and neck done really well, intonation, action, all good. Locking tuners on this, so they're Sung Eel locking tuners. Got a Sung Eel bridge as well, and it stays in tune, the vibrato, so it's really good. HBZ pickups, so that's a Harley Benton, in-house brand, but they're really good. Coil split as well, and it's just it plays like an absolute beast. And being an HSS Strat, it can do basically anything. And it's 179 euros, and I'm massively impressed with this guitar. Yeah.
That's an insane price, really, because it looks great as well. Like, the color looks great. Like, it looks obviously just over the camera, but it looks very well put together and everything too.
Yeah, this seafoam green is lovely, and there are a bunch of different colors that you can go for, and this price point in Europe is the same as the Squier Sonic HSS Strat.
Yes.
And I'm a big fan of the Squier Sonic series. Like, I've played a bunch of them. They're really good guitars. I own the Sonic Telly, and that's a fantastic guitar. But in terms of specs, in terms of what Harley Benton are able to throw onto these guitars, the features, the woods, the hardware and stuff like that, it's I don't know, it's a step up in many respects.
I can't help but notice that they've put the truss rod adjuster at the top of the neck as well, which again is almost one of those things that you do see a lot more on high-end guitars.
Yeah, this is something that I actually mentioned in the video, and good point, yeah. So there's a spoke wheel down here, so if you've got any issues with the truss rod, the guitar comes with a tool as well that you can use to do that. It makes it as easy and as simple as possible. And, on a cheaper Strat-type guitar, you'd expect it to be either here or even hidden, at the bottom of the neck within the body, and you'd have to take the neck off or whatever. So what they're doing is thinking of how to make these guitars as easy as possible for people while performing as good as they can at whatever price point they're doing. And if this is not going to be quite good enough for you, you can pay a couple of €100 more for the Plus, which gives you like a flamed maple neck instead, which gives you stainless steel frets, which gives you a Babbage bridge instead of the Sung Il Harley Benton bridge, and so on. And that is a fantastic guitar, but for me, the real bargain is this one, because sub $200, 180 euros, 150 quid or whatever, that's pocket money prices for a guitar in 2024, 2025. It's a really fantastic value proposition.
It's just crazy what you can get for your money these days. I'm
Yeah.
consistently blown away more so these days by affordable pieces of gear than I am with high-end pieces, because if you buy a guitar from like B&G, for instance, or like we've both talked a lot about Valiant guitars over the years, which are $3,000 plus, you're getting a quality instrument for that price. So it's not really a surprise that they're good instruments. But when you can then take a guitar that costs 180 euros and say, this is easily a contender, that's a big deal. Like the fact that you can get such good quality for so little money these days is crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've said it on every single one of these that we've done, but imagine if when we were kids just first started and we had one of these instead of what we did have. Yeah.
It's
Great
insane.
time to be a guitar player. Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. So well done again, Harley Benton. It's I think they're also a feature pretty much every year on this list, but they're doing something right, and they just, at Guitar Summit 2024 in September, they just sort of previewed and teasered some of their 2025 guitars. And if what they showcase there is actually going to come out at Harley Benton prices, nitro finishes and relics and stuff, well, it's going to be a good year next year as well.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
They just keep doing it over and over again. It's mad.
They just keep doing it, and they have this freedom to do stuff that I guess, brands like a Fender or a Gibson might not have the opportunity to do,
Yeah,
So
definitely.
they're trying stuff. Some things work, some things don't. But at the prices, most players can afford to take a punt on something.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah. So there you go. That's the ST Modern by Harley Benton. Any other guitars you'd like to show us from this year?
Yes, I'm going to take your affordable S-Type and I'm going to raise you another affordable S-Type. This is the Ventana by a company called Sceptre, which are...
Okay.
They're kind of an offshoot of, if you know anything about Levinson guitars or Blade guitars.
Yeah.
So they were really big with a designer called Gary Levinson, who's kind of behind the brand. The Sceptre range is his new kind of affordable offshoot of his guitar range, basically. So it's sort of like a Levinson designed guitar, but these retail in the UK for about $350-ish.
Okay.
Just a really great, well put together S-type guitar. It's incredibly lightweight. I can't remember what the word is. I think it might be a Kume. Super lightweight. They've got Levinson design pickups, which sound fantastic. It's got, it's a Wilkinson trem, so it's kind of rock solid. Nice roasted maple neck.
Yep.
It's kind of, well above, it's spec'd up well above its price point. And kind of like, the ST Modern, it's just like, it does the Strat thing just really well, but it definitely plays well outside of what you pay for it. And it's quite cool because it's a brand that isn't necessarily like a household name brand, but are also still competing in that same kind of, lower priced but high quality guitar arena, which is fun.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that kind of price there is, I guess, similar to Squire Classic Vibe sort of territory.
Yeah.
And again, specs-wise there, with a roasted maple neck and stuff like that, it's impressive. And that's a fantastic looking guitar. I've never seen it before. I must confess that I've not seen videos on it on your channel, so I'll have to go and watch those. Links will be down there for everybody else. But yeah, it looks like a really decent instrument.
Yeah, very good. I was really, really impressed by this. It just played, like, out of the box, it just kind of played great. The frets, again, kind of like the Harley Benton I just talked about, they're really nicely rounded, really smooth edges. The fretboard edges have got like a slight roll to them, so it kind of feels, quite nice under the hand. The neck is really nice. It's sort of like the right balance between a slightly fatter Strat neck, but not too big. So if you're used to playing like kind of older feeling Strats, it kind of feels right at home. But if you're a new guitar player, it's not going to feel like you're playing, like a baseball bat. But they've done a few things like, kind of angled the neck healing a little bit, just, 22 frets. Those little tweaks you kind of make to a classic Strat to make it that little bit better. But yeah, very impressive. They were a new brand for me this year as well, to be honest. I only started speaking to them this year. And yeah, I was just very, very impressed. From the minute I played this, I just knew that this was a real interesting and real special guitar for the money.
Yeah, those are new for me as well. I shall have to check those out, hopefully at the NAMM show in January, and maybe get to try one for myself in 2025.
Yeah, because the actual Levinson blade guitars, the ones that are way more expensive, are amazing instruments, and they're some of the best kind of, in a lot of ways, kind of one of the first boutique Strat companies as well, because they were kind of doing the high-spec boutique Strat style guitar, you know, for years. They've been around for a long, long time. And it's really cool now that they've managed to kind of distill that down into a guitar that costs, you know, as you said, the same kind of price as a classic Vibe Squire. But without losing any of the kind of unique stuff as well, which is nice.
Yeah, exactly. It's got its own vibe going on as well, and I really like that about it.
Yeah. All the guitars are interesting color combinations as well. So obviously, like, you've got like this kind of, what would you call this? Like kind of like a sonic blue.
Yeah, it's maybe a bit, but it's even more vivid than a sonic blue. It's got a bit more brightness to it.
Obviously, with the tortoise shell, you can also get it in what's the other color they do? There's like an orange with a different color scratch plate. They also do a lavender purple one. And I think there's a red one as well. So what you don't get is the typical Strat colors, which is quite nice. It's all a little bit different.
Yeah.
They've intentionally avoided, you know, a black Strat, a sunburst Strat. They've gone for things that are a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
Which, again, I think is a cool selling point, because for a younger guitar player, you might not necessarily want a really classic vintage-looking guitar. You might want something that's a little bit more kind of contemporary looking. So I think they've kind of tapped that market quite nicely too.
Yeah, exactly. And with the color schemes, I think, you know, when you're at that sort of price point, these are not beginner's guitars in that they're of a higher quality level, and you could play one of these at any stage of your guitar journey. But at that price point, they are in a place where kind of beginners with a bit more cash might be looking at them. And a whole lot of the decision process is going to be dictated by how cool they look, in a way. And to give you some different color options and these different scratch guard options and stuff like that, that's a really nice way of doing things, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's also available with humbuckers as well. You can get a HSS one too.
Well, there you go. So, you know, that's if you are a beginner who's looking for a guitar in that sort of a price range, an HSS version of one of those in one of those cool colors is going to be a great option. And probably no one else is going to be playing one as of yet in your friendship circle or whatever. So nice choice.
Yeah, very cool guitars.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I've got a few more guitars that I would kind of want to list a bit more quickly, who are kind of on my short list. Unfortunately, I don't have any of them in the room right now because I'm going through sort of renovations, but I'll B-roll stuff in, and I think you know most of these anyway. So I'd start by mentioning the PJD Carey Apprentice Standard Silverburst, like a one-off guitar that I had a couple of months ago, which is kind of I'm going to use my hands to showcase it to you, but everybody else will be seeing a picture at this point. It's like a Les Paul Junior in terms of design, so a single cutaway, beautiful Silverburst finish, single PJD Wadfather humbucker in the bridge, and a volume control. No tone control or anything like that. Rosewood fingerboard, PJD quality throughout, and those retail at under £1,000. So made in England guitar, just amazing quality, amazing tones. And that one surprised me a lot, because I thought, if I'm getting a Les Paul Junior type guitar with a humbucker and not even a tone control, how much am I going to be able to do with it? You know, because you want options, don't you? You're missing a neck pickup, you're missing a tone control. How versatile is it going to be? But that guitar can actually do everything. I was amazed at how good it was for so many different genres. And yeah, I'm still in a position where I would like to acquire that instrument, but that's still TBC. Yeah.
Less is more. Like, I find sometimes the less options you have, the more it makes you think about how you're playing it. And you don't get caught up in switching options and different things. You just focus on, like, I'm going to play this really well because I've got one thing to do and I've got to do it right.
Yeah, with a guitar like that, with a single pickup, if you're someone who's kind of thinking it's not going to do it for me, it's not going to have the options that I need, I would recommend that you give it a try, and you never know, it might work for you. But that said, there's a couple of other guitars that I do want to mention that I played this year that are fantastic, and they have the opposite in that they have every option under the sun. The first is the Yamaha Pacifica Standard Plus, which I believe you're probably also familiar with. I'll let you talk about that afterwards then. And then
this was my honourable mention for the year.
Okay, well, you can honorably mention that guitar afterwards, but I'll give my last honorary mention to the vintage REVO Surfmaster Thinline Twin. That's a bit of a mouthful, but it's kind of like again, B-roll coming for everybody who's not Leigh right now. It's an offset sort of guitar shaped in the vein of a Jazzmaster or a Jaguar, but it's got two Allen Entwistle designed humbucking sort of what's the word? The Gretschy pickups, Filtertron styley pickups in it. It's got an Entwistle, another tone twisting tool, the ATN5 Variator, which is kind of like the Variac control that you'd see on a Gibson, for example, that gives you more tonal options. It's got a vibrato, it's got excellent specifications, and it does so many different sounds. And unfortunately, I don't have it here, but it's a great guitar, and I've got a full video on it that you can watch elsewhere. But yeah, another great option if you're looking for a slightly sort of off the beaten track sort of thing, if you want to think outside the box a little bit. I think we've kind of done that with most of the guitars this year. It's not like your basic choices, something a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, I was very much into the idea of having the classics, you know, a Les Paul, a Tele, a Strat. But as I've gotten older and I go down different rabbit holes with my sound, I do find I'm now more attracted to guitars that are a little bit quirky. That's why stuff like the B&G, for instance, really spoke to me, because it's like a Les Paul look, but it's got P90s and it's got a 335 cell construction. It's just like, you get some different stuff that you don't get from the classics. And I think I'm a lot more drawn these days to things that are a little bit weird and a little bit kind of different. Yeah.
And again, you know, the Pacifica Standard Plus that you've got there, that's like, everybody looking at it is going to say that's a Stratocaster, but it's got its quirks, right, that make it different.
Yeah, very different. The Rupert Neve pickups, or Rupert Neve designed pickups, is the first thing that's quite quirky, because they, even though it's a HSS set, they don't sound like typical HSS pickups. They have a much more, I think I'd probably describe it as like a hi-fi quality to them.
Yeah.
They're very full range. And what I have found is, I've gigged with this quite a bit, I found to make this sound kind of like what I'd expect a HSS guitar to sound like, I've actually had to back the tone off a little bit, because these pickups seem to let through a lot more frequencies that I'm not used to hearing, if that makes sense. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because for certain applications, this makes a lot of sense. Like, I find when I'm recording with this guitar, it's really good for that, because you get so many frequencies and so much of a full range sound. For live use, I found you do have to tame it a little bit, but yeah, it's quirky, but it's fun though. It's different. It's a really great guitar to play. Really great studio guitar. Versatile. I mean, it's, you know, it's a Yamaha. They make pretty solid stuff. It holds tune well. There's not really a lot to complain about with these, as you know, because you've had one for a while as well.
Yeah, exactly. Really nice necks on those two. And I said exactly what you said in my videos about this guitar, about the pickups. They have a very hi-fi, pristine tone to them, which took me a few days of getting used to, because when I picked up that guitar at first, I was expecting it to look, feel, and sound like your traditional HSS Stratocaster type of guitar. But it doesn't. And once you get through that and you work out kind of the strengths of these pickups, it is a fantastic instrument, and you can play anything with it. Yeah.
Really well put together as well. I found that tuning wise, it's pretty solid too, even when you're using the sort of the tremolo.
Yeah.
It kind of returns to pitch very well. It does have lock and tuners, which obviously helps that. But Yamaha, and I mean, we've had this discussion on camera at length before, I always think whenever they label something as the standard range, and that's kind of right in the middle of their pricing tiers, that's always the stuff that kind of performs the best across the board. Because I feel the same for the Rev Stars. I've got a standard Rev Star, and that's one of the best guitars I've ever owned. And I think this is no different. I just think Yamaha have really nailed what they can do for that kind of like sub £1,500 price tier. Like, whatever they put in this price range always just seems, you know, perfect, really.
Yeah,
Seems
exactly.
to deliver everything you want it to.
Yeah, I totally agree. That said, though, I'm actually wondering if in 2025 they'll release a more affordable version of the Pacifica in the vein of the Element Revstar. Because, with the Revstar range, you had the Element, then the Standard, then the Japan-built Professional. And with the Pacifica, we have the Standard Plus, and then we have the Japan-built Professional model. But there's nothing under €1,000, $1,000, and maybe an Element guitar would sit well in the range, but I guess not long till we find out if they're going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if they didn't do that, because that obviously the big stigma with the Pacifica name is that everyone thinks of them as the beginner guitars, because for many years that's kind of what they were. Even though Yamaha always had higher priced Pacificas in the catalogue, they've always been seen as like more of an entry level guitar. It would be interesting to see what would happen if they did bring a more affordable version of this in, because I think that would maybe kind of redefine what goes on at the bottom end of the Pacifica range. Because they have that one, we actually talked about it on camera a couple of years ago, didn't we? The Pacifica 11, was it the 112?
Yeah.
That's a really great guitar. And that was kind of like the newer version of the complete basic entry level one.
Yes.
So yeah, it would be really interesting to see where, if they did an Elements one, where would that sit? Would that replace the 112? Or would it be this new tier kind of between total beginner and kind of, this level, the standard level? Would there be like this kind of new middle tier, as it were?
Yeah, exactly, because I think a lot of people were wondering when this new range came out, would they discontinue the older classic ones? They haven't yet, and it doesn't look like they're going to. And that does kind of mean that there is room in kind of the, £500-600 euro price point to stick in something like a new Element Pacifica.
Yeah. Or would they align it closer to the pricing tier of the Revstar and get it in that sort of £350-400 range?
Oh, is the Element really that much more affordable? I thought it was like 500-600, but you might be right.
I was assuming it was cheaper. Maybe I'm wrong. For some reason, I always had in my head that it was like around the £400 mark. Maybe it's not.
You might be right. It might be £400 and like €499 or €500 or whatever where I am, and yeah, that would work.
Yeah, because there's about a 20% difference, isn't there, between the UK and Europe most of the time.
So it could be something like that, but who knows? We may find out in 2025. So that's it for our guitars. I mean, the one other guitar kind of range that I want to mention, and I think it is worthy of a mention, is the fact that in 2024, Fender refreshed their Player series and came out with the Player 2 lineup, which was kind of a big thing. The Player series is their current kind of standard, I would say entry-level, made in Mexico Fender lineup. Cost about €600-700 where I am, slightly less in pounds where you are. And the Player 2 series brought about a number of changes. I think some would say improvements in certain regards, different specs, different pickups, rosewood fingerboards, which for me was a very cool thing, with rounded edges, which I really like as well. I believe you've tried some of them at length, and you have a video with, is it the Jazzmaster on your channel?
Yes. Yeah, I did a video. I did a video with the Player 2 Jazzmaster. And I also did a video comparing the Player 1 Jazzmaster to the Player 2 Jazzmaster and talking about like the key differences between the two models.
Yeah, there you go. So, and I'm assuming you think the Player 2 is better?
They're both great. For me personally, the Player 2 is more appealing because it has more of that classic feel. The Player 1, to me, it still feels like a great guitar, but it didn't feel like what... to go back to the whole thing with like classic feeling guitars, it didn't feel to me like what I think a Fender should feel like. It felt a lot more modern because it didn't have the rounded edges, like the fretboard was a bit of a different shape, whereas the Player 2, they've kind of gone for more of that traditional Fender feel. So if you're more of a vintage purist, the Player 2 is definitely more where you would be at home with a Player.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. I couldn't put these guitars on my list because I've only tried a few in shops. I've not had the time to really sit down with one and get to know it. The one sort of, not criticism, but worry that I have is that all of the Player 2s that I've picked up in stores so far have been, for my personal taste, very heavy, like physically, weighty beasts. I'm someone who likes a guitar to be under, let's say, 3.4, 3.5 kilograms, or 8 pounds in that kind of measurement. And I think that pretty much all of the ones that I picked up in stores were, in some cases, significantly more than that. There was one Strat that was 4 kilograms. It was in a shop in Germany where they wrote the weights on them, over 4 kilograms, which for me is too heavy, but that's a taste thing.
I didn't really think too much about the weight, but yeah, thinking about it, the ones I've picked up have felt a little heavy. But yeah, at the time it didn't really cross my mind. But it's a good observation though, because for some people that is a bit of a deal breaker where they want to know how heavy a guitar is.
Yeah, for some reason for me, weight's always been one of the categories that I always look at. And in all the videos that I do get the scales out, weigh the guitars, and talk about whether I think it's good or not. So yeah, for me, it's if a guitar is over 4 kilograms when it could be under 3, if you get a really lightweight one, that's a deal breaker for me. I think probably even if it plays great and sounds fantastic. Yeah. But there you go. We all have our own quirks, don't we?
Yeah. Everyone likes different things.
Indeed, we do. It would be a very boring world if we all played the same guitar and stuff like that. Okay, so let's move on to the next little thing, and that's going to be guitar pedals. What have you played this year in the world of the guitar pedal that's really floated your boat or ended up on your board even?
So the first one, I haven't actually made a video about this yet, but this is a pedal that I've literally taken out the box to test it and put it straight back in the box because it's quite rare and quite valuable. And I've literally bought this just because it's going to be part of my collection. And this is the new Eric Clapton Crybaby. Mm-hmm. So this is very cool because it's...
Oh, shiny.
Shiny gold. So they've only made a certain number of these, and these were never actually meant to land in the UK. They're meant to be a Guitar Center only thing, but the distributors in the UK have managed to get a few of them, which will be available or are available through PMT. I think it's PMT that's selling them, but they're going to be super limited numbers, but they're very expensive. For a Crybaby, these are like 380 quid.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because a lot of the money is going to Eric Clapton's charity, the Crossroad Foundation. So it's kind of like a celebration of 60 years of him with the brand, and the money's going to fund his charity. But I'm a huge Eric Clapton fan, and he was the whole reason I got into playing wah. So when this was announced, I was literally straight on the email to my contact at Dunlop and said, I don't care what it costs, but I need one at my house because I just need to own that. So this is a pedal that has been a really nice purchase for me this year. It was a gift to myself. Once the video goes up for this, you'll probably never see this ever again because I'm never going to gig this. This is literally just for my own personal use and my own personal collection. But yeah, this is probably my favorite pedal that I've come across this year. Just, it's a Crybaby. You know what everyone knows what a Crybaby sounds like, but just on a personal level, because of how much Clapton inspired me when I was growing up, this was kind of the thing this year for me.
Yeah, exactly. You can't put a price on that, can you? And it is a spectacular looking thing. So I can imagine that sitting in a glass case or some kind of LED lit thing, slowly twisting around in the background of your studio there. Never getting played because it doesn't need to be, but yeah.
The only problem with it is, though, I don't know if this will show up on camera, but because it's shiny gold, it attracts fingerprints like nothing else. So every time I take it out the box, I'm constantly wiping it down with a cloth because, yeah, it's just like there's fingerprints all over it now just because I've shown it on camera, which is the whole reason I never want this to leave the house because I don't want it to get trashed.
Yeah. Yeah, combine that with a gloss finish black guitar and you've got a recipe for fingerprint disaster. But yeah, like you say, that's one for the collection. That's one you'll never part with. So it's a great purchase in that regard.
Yeah, it's a collector's piece.
Yeah. I suppose just quickly before I go into my favorite new pedals of this year, we've talked about this every year so far as well, but finally in 2024, I got my Analogman King of Tone.
Yes.
So my time on the 6-year waiting list came to an end. I've got that pedal. It's not around here. It's in storage again, but a wonderful pedal. Was it worth the wait? I think so, absolutely. I mean, you can get pedals for a tenth of the price that sound the same, that do the same thing basically, or at least they sound 99% the same perhaps. But when you pick up the King of Tone, when you hold it in your hands, you feel like this special sort of like, yeah, this is a great thing. This is a piece of guitar history there. And that wah pedal is going to do the same for you, I think. And so in that regard, I'm super happy that this year, finally, I got a King of Tone.
Yeah, I love my King of Tone. I keep trying to not take it on tour because, you know, it doesn't take a genius to work out that they do go for a lot of money on the resale market. And I think that price will only go up because I actually went on the Analogman website the other day because I'm on the waiting list again for another one because I thought, I like this so much, I need to have a backup one. And yeah. I'm the sort of person that if I like something, I need to have another one of them just in case. I've done this with loads of pedals. Like I'll buy one and then I'll have to go and buy another one just in case that something goes wrong or whatever. And I'm 2 years off getting another one. But there's a disclaimer on the Analogman website that does say some of the parts he uses are actually running out. So there is going to be a point where these pedals aren't made anymore.
Yes.
And at that point, the price is only going to go one direction, which is going to be up. Because even though King of Tones are hard enough to find now, they're going to get harder because obviously once he runs out of, I think it might be the transistors, once they no longer exist, because he's using like NOS stuff, once that's gone, that that pedal will never be made again. So yeah, I'm kind of holding hope now that I do get my second one.
Yeah, fingers crossed that you do. I think you probably will, although, if you're currently 2 years away from the end of the list, it will be probably 3 until you get it. But yeah, because I remember when I first got myself on the list, I think it was 4 years or something behind that they were, and it ended up being the best part of 6. So yeah. And you're totally right.
Oh, go on, sorry.
No, carry on.
I originally joined the list in 2017 and I got my pedal in 2020. So that was 3 years. But then I rejoined the list straight away in 2020. So that's already 4 years ago. And I'm still 2 years from the top now. So yeah, 6 years at the moment without any problems cropping up, obviously.
Wow, crazy. But yeah, I put myself on the list again as well. I honestly don't know if I'll ever get to the top of it for a second time, but who knows?
Who knows?
It's luckily something I don't wake up every day and check the list about, because I think you go mad if you were doing that. Yeah. Okay, but anyway, so I've got my King of Tone. In terms of newer pedals this year, I think you probably know, and everybody watching my channel will know, that I'm a big transparent overdrive kind of a guy. Super exciting, I know, because there's not enough of those out there. But this year, one of my favorite companies and one of my favorite pedals, it's Nobels. They refreshed the ODR family. So they have the ODR-1, that's their kind of their iconic pedal, was the Nashville Session Pro's choice for years and was kind of a cult, but it's now sort of everywhere. And we have the full-size ODR-1, which has become the ODR-1X, that's the new version of that, and the ODR-mini is now replaced by the ODR-mini 2. Now these are both fantastic, really amazing sounding pedals. If you know the ODR-1, which you probably do, you'll know what these sound like. But Nobels are a company, I think, like Harley Benton, where they listen to what people ask for and they put in the features that make every new version kind of a little bit of a game changer compared to what came before it. So for example, with the Mini, the original Mini just had 3 knobs and it didn't have a bass cut knob, and that was something that a lot of people used to say, there's way too much low end in it, you can't really use it well with humbuckers. Well, they stuck a bass cut roll-off knob on this one, so it works really well. It opens it up to way more in terms of versatility. And on the ODR-1X, you got a bunch of other stuff. You've got the bass cut roll-up knob, you've got a gain boost as well, true or buffered bypass. It's just got way more in terms of options, and it's a great sounding thing. They're also not that expensive. This is about 80 euros over here, 60, 70 pounds in the UK maybe. This one's about 150 euros, so it's not super cheap, but the options are there. Those are fantastic pedals, and well, plenty of videos on my channel where you can hear them. But if you're looking for a decent choice, I think in particular the ODR-mini 2 is going to be a top seller because it's so small, but it's it's built like a tank as well. It sounds really good, and they just don't let you down. So this is my choice.
I'm quite new to the ODR thing. I don't have a Nobels ODR, but what I've been using a lot is
the Belle.
Yeah, the Wampler Belle, if that goes into focus, there we go. And that's kind of like Wampler's take on the ODR, and that's got the bass knob as well. It's not a bass cut, but it's just a control that allows you to control the amount of bass that you go into the signal.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is where I've always got my kind of ODR flavors from when I've needed them. And yeah, it's great. Like you said, it's kind of somewhat transparent, and then when you kick it up a bit, then you really start to see some interesting kind of things going on in the mid-range, but it can do everything from like a nice clean boost right up to some good crunchy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting thing about the Belle, I've had a couple of comments on my videos about the ODR-1X where people have said, so is this a clone of the Belle that was a clone of the ODR-1? Because there's a couple of features on the Belle that are kind of similar to some of the new ones in the ODR-1. Like there is a gain boost on here, and there's like a clipping switch or button on the side of the Belle, right?
Yeah, there's a button there that changes between two different clipping modes. I can't remember exactly what they are, but
no, I haven't spent more than 5 minutes in a shop with the Belle, but I'd really like to test it out against this one and see kind of what it does. But that's another cool thing. If you've got different builders kind of pushing each other on, spurring each other on to put in better features to make it better for people like us who buy and use the pedals, then that can only be a good thing. Yeah, so I'll hopefully try a Belle next year, and comparison videos coming your way.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. It's very good.
Yeah. All right, what else pedal-wise have you got?
The next one I think you'll like, on the King of Tone kind of trajectory, the Origin Effects Halcyon Blue.
Oh, yeah.
This is Origin's new variation on the Bluesbreaker. So it can do the classic Bluesbreaker sound, but then they've got like a mod as well, which adds a bit more gain and a bit more kind of fatness to the sound. It's got a dry blend, which is really cool because the original Bluesbreaker actually has a slight bit of clean signal pass through anyway. So you can replicate the clean signal pass through of an original Bluesbreaker, or you can use it for things like, blending in a stack drive with it, blending this with an overdriven amp, blending a bit of your clean tone in, or you can run it completely wet. And it also has something they call the adapt switch, which is a really cool thing that they do, which is when you roll back the guitar volume on an original Bluesbreaker, the sound gets quite mid-rangey and quite honky. What the adapt switch does, and I have no idea how this works, but there's adapt 1 and adapt 2, so there's different levels of this. When you roll back the guitar volume, the pedal gives you like a full range clean sound, so it sort of like drops the mids a bit and enhances the top end. I have no idea how it works, but it's really cool. So it kind of removes the honk that you get from a Bluesbreaker, and it makes it a bit more kind of sparkly, which is really cool. So it's kind of like a Bluesbreaker, but with all the tweaks that you'd want a Bluesbreaker to have. Kind of like some of the stuff that Analogman addressed with the King of Tone as well.
Yeah, very nice. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Is that a very relatively new release?
Yes, these came out like within the last 6 months. I think I shot my video for this, I want to say like September time, August, September time.
Yep.
So they're pretty kind of hot off the press, these things.
Yeah.
And they're Origin Effects pedals, so I don't know if you've ever felt one of these in real life.
Yeah.
But they are literally built like bricks. They're quite heavy. And yeah, I think this is the sort of thing like you could take this on tour and it would never succumb to life on the road. They really build their stuff rock solid.
Yeah, I remember I tried the original, it's the Revival Drive, isn't it? That was the first one that kind of put them on the map, yeah. And that was built like a tank too, yeah.
There's also like a tube screamer available, which is the Halcyon Green. And they've got the Halcyon Gold, which I also own, which is the Klon. And they've got the same kind of features, like there's like a mod and there's like the adapt circuitry and stuff like that as well. The Halcyon Gold is one of my favourite Klon clones like around. It's a great pedal. And they've just released, literally like 2 weeks ago, like a tweed amp style one as well, which I haven't tried yet, but that's like a brand new one too.
Nice.
Sort of like a tweed amp in a pair.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I'll have to give those a try for sure, because I've seen some videos on this one but not tried it, but I'm a big Bluesbreaker fan, and yeah, got to give that a try.
Yeah. Yeah, if you like Bluesbreakers, like this is perfect.
Yeah. Okay, my next choice then, in terms of, versatility on the overdrive front is going to be the Nobel Tone Daily Driver Boost. So I think a lot of players will be familiar with his Daily Driver now. That was kind of his low to medium gain drive pedal that works with any amp, with any guitar, with anything. And it's an original circuit, like all of Roman's circuits are kind of original, but with kind of nods to other things. He also had a boost pedal that gave you up to, I think, is it 30 dB of boost, something like that? So a lot of boost in it. And this year he's put out the Daily Driver and the boost together, and that gives you a smorgasbord of overdriven options for kind of any kind of tone. It's a very new pedal for me. Like, I've only had this one a couple of weeks, but I've been testing it out in many different simulations and so on, and it works really well for everything. So it's a great choice. And I'm guessing you probably haven't tried any of these Schnobel pedals.
I haven't, no. I'd like to, but I haven't actually tried them yet.
No. Well, hopefully he'll be at NAMM in January if you're there, and I believe he's got Andertons in the UK sell his pedals now. So that could be an option as well if you're ever close to Guildford. Which you're probably not. Although you're travelling around a lot and you never know.
Yeah,
you might be.
I'm about 3 hours from Guildford.
Yeah. Yeah, so you could try that. So yeah, on the one hand, I wanted to showcase the Daily Driver, Boost, great pedal. And on the other end of the budget, and we're also kind of into sort of amp modelling, but analog amp modelling territory, we've got the NUX 63 Diamond, which is, I believe you're reaching for something. That brand's take on... Is it a 64 Vox AC30 top boost?
63, I think, because it's called 63 Diamond.
Very smart. Yeah, you're right. Of course it is. Yeah, this is, I think, probably in the UK, sub £50 in the UK, and in Europe, about €50. Does that Voxy sound really well. I've tried it with a number of other different sort of clean amps, and it gives them that sort of Voxy sort of a sound. You know, it works really well. It's got a lot of meat to it as well. If you want to do Brian May sort of sounds, it's fantastic for that. But British Invasion 2, Beatles sort of tones, really, really great choice.
Yeah,
I really looks like a Vox as well. Yep.
Yeah, I really, really like this pedal. I had a lot of fun shooting the video for this one.
Yeah, NUX is another brand where the stuff they build is very affordable, but it's great stuff, and it really seems to go under the radar. I think last year on my list I had the 65 OD, which is their take kind of on a Timmy sort of an overdrive. And that's also under £50, €50, $50. And it's great. But I've never seen anyone else playing one.
Yeah.
It's odd.
The Timmy is a really cool drive. It's like not enough people kind of give it the time it deserves. Like I love the sound of a Timmy. I've got one on my touring pedal board as my kind of lead boost. I've got the MXR one, but I'd love to get a proper one at some point.
Yeah, great drives, and great for stacking together with other low-gain drives, and something like the ODR-1, for example, or the Belle in your case. All right, so what's next on your pedal list?
Okay, so the next one is this, if my autofocus will play the game, the Free the Tone Overdrive Land. This is a new brand to me. I'd never tried any of their stuff before. This is their kind of take on like a Dumble style overdrive. And I've never played a real Dumble, but I've played a bunch of different kind of pedal clones of that sound. And this one is the one that probably feels the most, I don't want to say authentic because I don't have a real reference point to go off, but this feels the most like what I would imagine a Dumble amp would feel like to play, if that makes sense. So they've done something inside. Again, I'm not going to profess to know exactly how it works, but there's some kind of magic inside with some transformers they've used. So this actually kind of, you know when a pedal company says an amp in a box, this kind of feels like an amp, which is interesting. It sort of feels and reacts a bit like an amp does, not just like an overdrive pedal, even though it is an overdrive pedal rather than a preamp. So it's a really cool pedal though. I haven't done a video on it yet, but I've been getting to grips with it. And like all kind of Dumble-y stuff, it's quite hard to dial in because Dumble-style circuits are incredibly unforgiving. So if you play something bad, they're very quick to show you that you've done something bad. So it kind of takes a while to figure out how to set a Dumble-style sound to kind of fit your playing. But when you find it, it's like a fantastic feeling sound. But yeah, this is a really cool pedal. This is one that I think I'm going to be spending a lot of time with in 2025 because it's a bit of a journey kind of exploring this thing.
Yeah, nice. I've not heard of that, but I need to go and check that out. But yeah, the thing about Dumble amps is that each one was built for a specific guitar player. And so in that sense, they were all unique in a way. Would be really interesting to know kind of on which Dumble amp that pedal was based, or if it was based on one that was kind of intended for a specific player, or if they're kind of just going for that Dumble sound, whatever the Dumble sound is.
There's a whole story about it on their website, on the Free the Tone website. The owner of the company has a Dumble. So it's literally like he's basically taken his Dumble and kind of figured out how to put that into a pedal form as well.
Yeah.
They've done something really cool as well, where it runs off 9 volt, and you can set it to run off 9 volt, but there's also an internal power scaling thing with a switch on the back of the pedal. And what that does is it kind of ups the headroom as if you were running it at like 18 volt, but the pedal does the work for you. So you still run it off 9, but then you can choose whether or not to scale the power. And it makes a big difference in terms of like the compression level of the pedal.
Yeah.
So when you run it on 9 volt, it feels a bit more kind of compressed and squashed. And then when you open it up, it feels more like a kind of a cranked, kind of open feeling amp.
Yeah, more headroom, yeah.
Yeah. And there's some cool features like stuff that they've built onto the Dumbles. Like there's a switch called the glass switch, which takes the EQ circuit out. And there's like the rock and jazz EQ switch, which changes the low end and the mid range. So they've sort of taken all the features of the amp and kind of figured out how to put that into the pedal as well, which is fun.
Yeah, that does sound fun. Yeah, I'll have to give that one a try as well.
Yeah, it's a really cool pedal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's going to be one that I'm going to be spending a lot of time with in the coming 12 months.
Cool. And you're going to be surprised now because for my last kind of definite choice for pedals of the year, I'm moving away from overdrive.
Okay.
How about that? Bet you never expected that. But anyway, it's Nobels again. Like a few weeks ago, they came out with this. This is the DEL-mini, which is a very simple, easy to use, but cracking sounding delay pedal that I think is kind of, in a way, it's what I would call a meat and potatoes delay because it doesn't have crazy algorithms in it. It doesn't have shimmers or reverse or anything like that. It doesn't have a bunch of menus or anything like that. It's got 3 modes, it's got 3 knobs and a switch, and you turn it on and off here. But it's so good at what it does. And it's got everything I would need from a delay pedal, because you can hold down the foot switch to give yourself tap tempo. It's got stereo out if you want to use stereo. You've got tape, analog, and digital modes, and they just all sound really, really decent. You know, like I said, it's not going to be a delay like for someone who loves the options that like the Strymon timeline would give them, for example. If you want massive octave up and down, swelling in delays and stuff like that, it's not going to be for you. But it's an incredibly musical pedal, and whenever I turn it on, it makes me sound better. And if a pedal does that, it gets its place on this list.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like simple delays. Like, for me, no delay has ever matched the Boss DM2.
Yeah.
To this day, that is still my favourite delay ever. I'm yet to find any company that's ever made something that's functioned better than the DM2 for me.
Yeah, that's just such a simple and perfect pedal, and it's like, it's never in the way of what you're playing, you know? And yeah, the Nobels is a digital pedal, but the analog mode does that thing as well. I mean, I maybe it's all in my head, but I do sometimes feel like you get a slightly different response from a genuine analog delay, a genuine Bucket Brigade chip or whatever, but this one works really well at that. But yeah, the DM2 was the best. And I came very close this year to buying the DM101, is it? You know,
yeah,
Boss's new kind of fully analog, but with more kind of presets delay that it has like 8 or even 10 chips in it or something like that. But in the end, like what the DM2 does is it just works. And there's a reason that it's a classic. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. The original ones are quite pricey now. They've sort of crept up to around like the £250 mark. But
yes.
But you can still get like the Wazacraft one is great as well. I've got the Wazacraft one and an original one, and there's not a huge difference between the two. Like, they've done really well to replicate what the original one did.
Yeah, exactly. And I think If I'm right, what the Wazacraft One offers is like a secondary mode, the custom mode that gives you a longer delay time if you'd want that, and slightly brighter repeats as opposed to the quite dark repeats in the original DM2. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it gives you those options, but really to play 99% of music, you don't need more than that, and that's the beauty of a pedal like that, and the beauty of a pedal like this, the Nobels DEL-mini. Yeah.
The other thing the Wazacraft one has as well is it's got like some there's like an expression pedal input where you can basically connect the expression pedal to ramp up the rate, which I don't think. No, I can see my original one doesn't have that. So the Wazacraft one has a direct out as well. So if you run this in stereo, you can choose, I think you can choose, but you can either have like a wet and dry out, or I think there's a way to set it up so that you can have wet out of both, I think. Or you can just run it in mono. But the original one only has an in and an out. It doesn't have those extra two features. But the Wazacraft one does have some extra stuff in there as well.
Yes. Yeah, the DM2 Wazacraft is definitely like, if you're looking for a modern yet classic delay, it's like definitely got to be in the conversation every time, I think.
Yeah, whereas the original is just straight to the point.
Yeah, absolutely. It does one thing, it does it fantastically well, but if you need slightly more in terms of options, well, there's plenty of options out there. Yeah.
It's a wonder they only really made them for like, I think it was 2 years they made them. Maybe 3 years at the start of the 80s. And then that was it. They kind of moved on then to the next thing. But it's become such a cult classic. I'm really surprised that, they stopped making them as quick as they did.
It's funny, right? But I guess the industry is also riddled with, pedals and guitar models that were the same sort of a way. And I don't know if it's because of the internet or word of mouth as well, but certain pedals just become very much a sort of hyped up thing again, and everybody suddenly wants it. And, definitely pedals like the Analogman, the King of Tone, and the Paul Cochran Timmy, for example. Those are, of course, still made, but in very limited numbers. And it's like the strength of internet hype has made them into a much bigger thing than they really are, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But anyway, delay is good. Got any more pedals to showcase for us?
Yeah, just some honourable mentions, really. I guess they kind of count as pedals, but it also kind of segues us to the next section of the video in amps, which is some amp modelers that I've tried this year that have been really cool. And I've got a cheap one and a more expensive one. First one, Line 6 Pod Express. We've done a video on this together. There's not much to say about this other than it's really cool. The fact that Line 6 have managed to take, a lot of those kind of really great modelling sounds and put them in a pedal that costs under £200 is typical Line 6 craziness, really, because they've done a really good job with this.
Yep.
And this is definitely one of those pedals that I think probably exceeded my expectations, because I don't know what I expected when I went into this, but I was actually really, really impressed by the sounds and like the functionality of it and how easy it was to dial in, and just the overall use case for this, because it can be used as a, you could gig with this, you could use it as a practice rig because it's got headphone out, you could use it, to play at night time in a hotel room, wherever you are, you can use it for recording. It's got so many different uses, and it's a tiny little box.
Yeah, and I remember in the video that we did, the two of us together with Jake Lee, it was kind of a new thing for Jake and I, and you'd used it before, and you took us through the preset making process, and you can literally get from nothing to great sounds with that in 5 minutes. No problem whatsoever.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the kind of pricing structure, I tried this thing this year, which is the Ample by Poly Effects. My autofocus really doesn't like this one. This is another amp modeling pedal, but this works with profiles of amps, which are called NAM profiles, N-A-M. I don't know much about that world or what that entails, but they're basically profiles of amps, kind of, what you'd expect from like a Kemper or something like that. And this pedal's got them all loaded in. This is all touchscreen. So here, when this is plugged in, you have these like LED faders, which you control with your fingers. And when you press different buttons on the screen, the faders change color to show which parameters you're working with. And you can do some quite in-depth stuff with this. It's got a ton of different amps in there. There's like 7 categories, and each category has 8 different amps. So whatever the math on that is. There's 6 categories of guitar amps and a category of bass amps as well. So 6 8s for guitar amps, whatever that is, and then 8 bass amps on top. So lots of options.
Yeah, that's this is kind of the next generation of, amps, pedals in boxes, I guess. Is Poly the same company who not too long ago came out with a reverb pedal with like where you had what's the word, convolution reverbs of kind of huge spaces in the world, like real life, like old oil storage containers and stuff like that? Same company.
It's the same format as this as well, the same touchscreen interface. It's called the Verbs.
Ah, okay.
And they also did, in the same format as this, an overdrive pedal for the guitar player Josh Scott, not the guy from JHS. Josh Smith, sorry, not Josh Scott.
Yeah.
And he's got an overdrive pedal with this kind of same layout as well.
Oh, is it called like the Fives or something like that?
Flat 5.
Flat 5, yeah.
The one that everyone knows by Poly is this thing, the Bebo. It's kind of like a multi-effects, but like a modular synth, and you can, it's all touchscreen, and you can kind of chain effects up in all different ways. It's got like 4 inputs, 4 outputs. You can use it as a guitar pedal, but you can treat it like a modular synth. But in here, in the last major update he did, he added the Amp NAM profile loader, which I guess really was the genesis for this.
Yeah.
Because he took the profiles out of this set and put them in their own pedal. So it's quite cool. But yeah, it makes some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks exciting. I've not played it, I've not heard it, so I can't comment on that. But at the same time, for someone like me, who's a little bit old school, it looks like it might be a bit intimidating. But if it's intuitive, I think I can probably get behind it. Yeah.
Very, very intuitive.
Yeah.
I'm as analog-minded as they come, and I got on with that thing really well.
Yeah. Okay, nice. I look forward to trying it at the NAMM show. The NAMM NAMM show, not the NAM show.
Yeah.
Because there's 2 NAMMs now.
Yeah, this is a NAM loader, but this doesn't load the NAM show. This loads the other type of NAMs. But yeah, it's really cool. It's different as well. I like the fact that, kind of in the same vein as this, it's not super complicated. So what you can't do with this is you can't move the microphone positions. You can't change every variable of an amp like you can with something like a Helix or like a Quad Cortex. What you can do is you can control like the gain levels, the EQ, but everything else is kind of baked in. So it's like really good sounding amp profiles, but with just the stuff you need to tweak, not the extra stuff. So if you're someone who doesn't want to spend hours and hours going through menus, it's a really good option because it's I referred to it in my video as like amp modeling for analog people. Because there's no text on the screen, it's all sliders with LEDs. So you've got that tactile feel of actually moving something rather than reading a menu. So it's sort of like amp modeling for people who don't like digital stuff in a way.
Yeah, okay, interesting. I look forward to trying one of those out. Yeah,
it's a cool product.
Yeah. Price-wise, where are they roughly?
They are, off the top of my head, they're around the £400 mark.
Okay, so not super expensive by any means.
Yeah, not as expensive as like a Helix or a Quad Cortex.
Yeah.
Sort of, I guess, more in line with like a HX Stomp in that kind of ballpark.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Very nice. Yeah, and like you say, these could also fit into the amp category, which is coming next. So I'm just going to run through now the pedals on my kind of honorable mentions list. We'll go through them nice and quickly. First up is the JHS Hard Drive, their take on a beefy overdrive / distortion. The cool thing about this is you can make it sound like pretty much any other high gain drive. Sounds like my Metal Zone, sounds like my Rat, sounds like pretty much anything. So it's a really cool and really flexible pedal to have. Really nice option. Then from that to mega simplicity of the Beetronics Tuna Fuzz, one knob fuzz pedal that looks like it came in a can of tuna, because that's what the Beetronics founder began with, making pedals in tuna tins.
I love the way they packaged that as well.
Yeah, plastic, so it's less sustainable than some of their other packaging, but it's old school. It looks great, and it sounds pretty gnarly as well. Haven't done a video with this yet. I probably should. So that's a very cool one to look out for in 2025.
I haven't tried one myself, but it looks really cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then there's the HX1 by Line 6, which I've only just kind of got my hands on and haven't really spent much time with. But you yourself, Leigh, you obviously know how good the helix effects are. And this has a bunch of them in there. And the USP of the HX1 is that you can only use one at one time, which might sound like it's limiting in some ways, because you can only have a delay, or you can only have a reverb, or a modulation, or a drive, or whatever, and it doesn't do the amp sounds either, it's just the effects. But I can imagine that this could be an all-round sort of problem solver for any sort of situation, because there are many effects where I might only need them once over the course of a few hours, or over the course of a long set, for example. I personally might only need a tremolo once or twice, or a phaser, or a certain specific kind of weird delay or reverb, or something like that. And they're all in here, and you can have this as the kind of the Swiss Army knife pedal to cover any sound that you might only need once or twice during an evening, sort of thing. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So the HX1 is going to be one that I will discover next year, but I've got it this year, and it came out this year, right? So I hope it did. Otherwise, I've fouled this video.
I first heard of this at the tail end of last year, but that's because it leaked early, because one of the major American stores put the listing up like 2 months before it was actually meant to come out.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it didn't actually get released until January, though.
Just looking at a rather large online retailer here, they say they've had it since November 23, so it's definitely...
That's when it got leaked.
It's on the cusp of being 2024, and for me it was new in 2024, so it's keeping its place on my list. But yeah, it's a super cool thing, and if anyone needs to know about the Helix tech or the sounds, then there's a bunch of stuff on Leigh's channel, and he's something of an expert on that kind of thing, so check his channel out. I've got a couple of other pedals which I don't own or haven't played that I just want to mention that I would like to try. The JHS Flight Delay, kind of like a bigger, beefier version of the Nobles. 3 different delays. One of them is a reverse. It has modulation and stuff as well. Dedicated tap tempo switch. Looks like a really good delay problem solver. I've used a Rev G3 pedal in basically every single one of my videos I've ever made. And this year they came out with a 5th anniversary version of that pedal, the G3 5th anniversary. So looking forward to trying that soon. Then I'd recommend the Keeley OCTA PSI pedal, which is an octave fuzz pedal that just looks amazing in all the videos that I've seen. Don't know if you've come across that one.
I haven't seen that one yet, no.
No, check it out if you get the chance. I'm a big Jack White fan, so octave fuzz is just a thing that I really am loving at the moment.
I love octave fuzz.
Yeah. And then finally there's the Hello Kitty fuzz pedal from Fender, which I didn't manage to get in time, but it just looked like a super cool, fun thing. You know?
They're already up on Reverb for massively inflated prices.
I know, it's totally ridiculous. Scalpers, we don't like you for doing stuff like that. But in the videos that I've seen of it, it sounds like a really decent fuzz pedal. So there you go.
Yeah. There is one other pedal I've tried this year, and I'm just going to... I'm going to be that guy right now.
Be that guy.
Because
this is the place to be that guy.
There is a pedal that I've tried this year, and I'm looking at it right now. It's on my desk in front of me. And I can't show it on this video because it's not actually getting announced until the NAMM show. But it is my favourite pedal I've tried this year, and I'll show you what it is after we finish filming.
Okay.
But it's everything I would ever want in a pedal in one pedal. But that's all I'm going to say for now. But it's not officially been announced until the NAMM show, so I can't tell you what it is.
Okay, exciting times. Can you divulge any more tips, or is that as far as you can go for now?
That's probably as far as I can go, but I just want to throw it out there that there is another pedal I've played this year, which has been my favourite thing, but I can't show you what it is on the video. Can I show you the back of it?
Can you show us like the corner? So
I'll show you the back of it.
Oh, it's black.
That's as much as I can.
That doesn't help. Okay. Well, we're all excited, and we'll be coming back to your channel at NAMM to find out what that is.
Yeah, that's all you're getting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my favourite pedal that I've had all year.
Wow, okay, nice. Okay then, so from pedals to amplifiers, and because you've already touched on it with kind of the digital options that could be amps and could be pedals, I would have had the Pod Express on my list as well. I mean, I've only played it once in the setting at 42 Gear Street with you and with Jake, but I hope to get another one in to test it out. That is a fantastic option. Similar price point. It's been an amp/pedal/modeler that's kind of changed my opinion on modeling this year. That's the ToneX One by IK Multimedia. You have one too. This can be a pedal because you can load drive pedals into it, but I think its primary use, I think for most people, is going to be as kind of a... It's not a profiler, is it? Because they don't call them profiles. What do they call them? Captures?
Captures, yeah.
Captures.
But it's essentially the same kind of technology, though, isn't it? Like, you're basically running your amp through this to capture the sound of the amp, and then obviously take a version of it with you. But yeah, as you mentioned, the new update for this now allows you to model pedals as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, and so the ToneX One came out this year. It's the mini pedal version of the ToneX pedal. It does a lot of what the bigger one can do, not everything obviously, but you can have up to 20 sounds on this. All of your basic controls are on there as well. It sounds wonderful, and for me personally, as soon as I started kind of downloading some of the free captures from some third-party companies like Amalgam Audio, for example, I experienced something that I've never really experienced with modelers before, and that was a kind of playing feel and dynamic that just felt right to me. So this, when this pedal came out, there were so many YouTubers who had it, and they were writing titles and they were making thumbnails for their videos with that awful buzzword game changer on it. And I called a couple of them, like I spoke to Henning Pauli about it and said, is it really as good as you're saying it is? And he was like, yeah, get one now. So, I bought one, I spent my own money on it. And as an analog guy, as much in a way as I hate to say it, this is a fantastic thing. And I would recommend everybody at least tries it out.
Yeah.
Because for this price, even if you end up not really liking it as much as your amp, you could use it as an effects pedal, or you can take this as a backup, and if your amp breaks during a gig, this is your amp, And as you've said, recently they've brought a free update out where there are effects added to this as well. So it's not just your amp and your compression and your reverb, but there's delays and modulations and so on added to it. So it's just an all-encompassing beast. And it's can this tiny pedal, can this be my amp of the year? I don't know, but it sort of is,
What I really like about the new update as well is for people who... This is really interesting for people who have products that are very valuable. Because if you discount the fact that this can do modeling as well, and you can download profiles, what you can use this for, if you're someone who has rare pieces of gear, like specific pedals, like I'm lucky enough to own an original Blues Breaker, which I do not ever want to gig, but I love the way it sounds. And yeah, there's loads of Blues Breaker clones on the market, but if you really like the sound of the original thing, you can profile it and take it with you. So it's a really cool option for people who have pieces of gear that they don't want to take out with them as well. Same for amps. If you've got a very expensive amp that you don't want to take out, you can profile it on here and take that sound with you. So it allows you to actually not just create new sounds, but also take existing things you have anywhere with you, which is really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the real beauty of this is the fact that those profiles, those captures, they really do perform very, very closely to the originals, in my experience. And that's what makes the ToneX such an awesome option.
It's also, I think, really interesting from a touring musician's point of view. Like, if I've got a piece of gear, like an amp is a good example, because shipping amps is pretty hard because it costs a lot of money to ship stuff overseas. If you've got an amp that you are very, very connected to and you don't want to use anything else, but you have to go overseas to play, you could run a capture of it and take it with you without needing to rely on rented gear and hope the rented gear can do the same job. You can literally take your amp with you anywhere in the world in a pedal this size. So even just that alone, for the price these are, that alone is worth buying it, just to have your favorite piece of gear that you can literally fit into your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. And they do a bunch of other stuff as well. So if you are on the road and you want to practice in your hotel room, You can take this, run a guitar lead into here, stereo headphones out here, and you've got your whole rig just in this. If you want to record from the hotel room or whatever, it doubles as an audio interface as well. It's
just USB port at the bottom.
It seems to do everything, and it's got a tuner. So it's like, I mean, it's a cool thing. It's really, really good. I'm not sure if everybody would refer to this as an amplifier, because in the traditional sense of the word, it's not. But for me these days, this counts as an amp, and I think it's totally justified having its place on my list.
Yeah, it can be used as an amp, can't it? It can fill that gap if it needs to.
Yeah, exactly. So, from the ToneX, this tiny little thing, to maybe a more analog solution, do you have any real amps that you want to mention this year?
Yeah, so my favourite amps I've tried this year are back there. One of them is kind of behind the other one, but the Blackstar TV-10 A and the TV-10 B. Those are the kind of new continuations of the old Studio 10 series. So anyone who has watched any of my videos will know that that amp there, the Blackstar Studio 10 6L6, is probably the amp that I've used more than anything else on YouTube. Since I got that about 5 years ago, it's probably been in 80% of my videos, just because I trust the sound of it so much. The TV-10 series is like the new version of that. So they've changed the tone stack slightly. There's a new reverb and a few little tweaks. The TV-10 A is the 6L6 one, so it's kind of like the new version of that. And then the TV-10 B is the EL34 one, so it gives you a bit more of that kind of mid-rangey sort of British sound. They're only 10 watt amps, you know, Class A, single valve in them, but just sound great, like really pure sounding, which I like in an amp. I don't like amps that are too complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, we played these at 42 Gear Street, and they are just really great, straightforward and easy to use amplifiers with amazing performance. So, yep, I'm happy to have them on the list as well.
Yeah, I love them.
Yeah. But you've been a long-time Blackstar fan, I guess, and you've used their stuff for a long time. So it's good to hear from someone who's really familiar with the rest of their output that these measure up to what has come before.
Yeah, I've got Blackstar amps on tour with me as well. I've got the St. James 50 watt combo on the road with me, the 6L6 one. And it's just been super reliable. I've done hundreds of shows with it and I love it. And these ones are great for like recording use because they're only 10 watt. You can give them a bit more, you know, a bit more push and get those kind of cranked amp sounds at a lower volume, which is nice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, for me, for analog amps, there isn't one this year which is kind of your traditional style amp, which I've spent a lot of time with. But there is one which I tested briefly and I knew straight away I would love it. And I've got I've got a capture of it in here, actually. It's the Friedman PLEX.
Okay.
That came out this year. Totally impractical for many players, of course. You know, it's expensive also. Probably you could buy 20 of these for the price of a Friedman PLEX, but it's modeled after Dave Friedman's 68 Marshall JMP, I think it is. So if you love your Marshall Plexis, it will do that kind of thing. It does have a master volume on it, so you can make it a little bit quieter than many other 60s Marshall amps, and it sounds and feels fantastic. Everything about it is superlative, and it's the same experience I had as when I plugged into the BE100 Deluxe, whenever that came out a few years ago as well. Incredible amplifiers. I will probably never own either, and I probably don't need to, but for the experience alone, it's so worth it to have something like that if you have the option, and for that reason, I have to put the Plex on this list.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but I've been noticing that amplifiers like that, and we spoke about this last year, is this the end of tube amps? And of course it's not, but like it's getting so much easier to find solutions which are smaller, lighter, more practical, easier to use than something like a Plex or any full-size tube head.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be a place for real amps. I don't think that's ever going to fully go away. But we are definitely seeing this point now where the technology is catching up in so many ways. What I think we're not seeing much of anymore is full-size amp heads. Like I've got like a Marshall there that's like the full-size ones, you know, the ones that weigh like 40 kilograms.
Yeah.
we're definitely seeing more of a shift to smaller form heads. Companies are definitely downsizing that, but I think there's always going to be room for real amps in the market.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the kind of music you play as well. I think in like if we sort of look in like the, you know, the rock world, like classic rock, blues, indie, maybe punk, a lot of those bands are still going to be using real amps. But when you go up to the, you know, the technical metal guys, a lot of those guys have gone digital. Yes. And a lot of like pop artists have gone digital because it makes sense. So yeah, I guess it just depends on use case, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I can also see it that a lot of those guys playing, you know, rock and metal and more classic genres, I can see them leaving their amps at home. I see a lot of them doing that already and taking modelers out on stage, maybe, you know, captures or profiles of their favorite amps. And then when they go back to record, when they go to the studio, that's where the real amps are. And that's where they get those tones for the albums, for the recordings. But yeah, in terms of live use, in terms of touring, like you said, it's more practical to go out on the road with something this size compared to something that you can't take in a plane, you know?
Yeah, but I guess on the same token, it also depends on where you are in the touring world. Like, Angus Young from AC/DC is not going to take one of these on the road. He's always going to take his wall of Marshalls. You know, he's running 9 100-watt Marshall super leads at the same time. But he's in a position where that's not his problem. He has someone that carries them and sets them up for him. So I think, you know, if you're an upcoming band or you're a band who's touring on a budget, yeah, modeling is definitely the way. If you're already at that status, you know, you are Angus Young or you are, you know, Slash, take what you want because it's someone else's problem, you know?
Yeah. I'm just smiling thinking of Angus Young like trading in his Marshalls for 9 of these all in a row on a little pedal board, turning them all on.
That would be hysterical.
That would be amazing. But yeah, you're totally right. It's different solutions for different kinds of people. And, you know, of course, guys like Angus Young, that they will be analog till they no longer perform. But yeah, like you also said, there's a generation of musicians coming through. And I notice it particularly among metal players and down-tuned players that they grew up without amplifiers. As kids, they could plug straight into their computers and amp sims and plugins already, and they don't need amps, and they don't care about whether there's a tube in their product or solid state circuitry or digital. As long as it sounds good and it does the job for them, that's all they care about. And at the end of the day, I guess that is the most important thing, you know? If it sounds good, if it makes the music you want it to make, then it is good.
Yeah, exactly. That really is the bottom line, isn't it? Does it do the job you need it to do, yes or no?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and this absolutely does for me, but at the same time, I still want a Friedman PLEX. So that would be my final thought on it.
There's just something fun about using a real amp as well, though. There's an element of fun, especially when you get to stand on stage and turn it up a bit. You know, there's just something you don't get from digital.
Yeah, and I will never forget the first time I stood in a room and played an A power chord with a cranked plexi and felt it in my upper body, like how it smacks you in the gut. It's there's a different experience there, and I hope that everyone kind of growing up with plugins gets to experience that at one point in their lives too, even if it's to realize that they don't need that, you know. But yeah, it's an experience. But you know, on the amp front, that's kind of it for me this year. There hasn't been a whole lot. I've got a few honourable mentions that I would bring up, but nothing else that I want to put on my main list. What about you? Anything else for the main list?
The only other... I've acquired 2 other amps this year that have been really nice acquisitions to the studio. One is the Blackstar HT20 Mark III, which is there.
Yep.
It's just the new version of the HT series. It's a really kind of dependable, versatile all-round amp. The other thing is not a new product, but it's new to me. I don't even know if you can see it properly on camera, but you can actually. I recently got a PV6505.
Oh, nice. Okay.
One of the mini ones.
Yeah.
And it's great. Like I just had a bit of a gap in my sound for like some higher gain stuff, and I've been doing a lot of content recently with you know, some higher gain sounds, like some lesson content where I've needed a bit more gain than what I already had. So I got a 6505, and it filled that gap perfectly.
Yeah.
So obviously it's not a new product, but for me, I've only had it in my studio for like 4 months.
Yeah, that counts. That counts then. And I'm very interested to hear you playing some more stuff through that, because that is like more of a traditionally high gain sounding amp than I would expect to hear you playing through. So yeah, looking forward to hearing more of that.
Yeah, so I'm slowly adding a couple more high gain things. Like between that and the Black Spirit 200, those have become my high gain amps now.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay, so yeah, the other couple of things that I would want to mention. Firstly, there's something which is kind of between the small and the huge. It's actually a pedal amp that we tried together at 42 Gear Street. It's the Leigh Lionheart Loud pedal. And I went into the event not having any kind of thoughts or feelings or expectations about that pedal, but we made a video with it where we used it to make our kind of sub €1,500 £1,000 rig. And I've been thinking about that pedal amp ever since. You know, it's analog, it's 60 watts, it's got 2 channels, it's got a lovely reverb in it, and it just was really good. And I don't think either of us has had the chance since then to become more reacquainted with it. But I hope we will do at some point. But
yeah, I'd love to spend a day with one just to really kind of figure it out properly, you know. But my first impressions of it was that it was fantastic.
Yeah, me too. That was a great device. I mean, me personally, you know, I've worked in the amp industry for years, and I've done a lot with pedal amps in my time. And that one definitely brought something different, and it had fantastic tones and great options as well, you know, with the IR loading capabilities, MIDI and stuff like that. So yeah, would definitely like to give that one more of a try, but it deserves a space kind of on the sort of one to watch list. And it did come out in 2024, right? I'm starting to doubt myself as I say it.
I'm sure it was new at Gear Street. It was a new product, wasn't it?
Oh, really?
I think so. I'm pretty sure it was.
Oh, I can't find it here, but yeah, it must have been, right?
Maybe I just assumed that. But they did have they did have a version of that was out previously. Was it the Ironheart pedal?
Yeah.
And then they did these the two new ones, which are obviously designed with Tom Quayle and Martin Miller.
Yeah.
Which is the two that we saw at Gear Street.
Okay, yeah, they were released in June. So, yep, definitely 2024.
Yeah, there we are.
So yeah, the one we tried was the Tom Quayle version, and then there's the Martin Miller designed Ironheart, right, which is more high gainy. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, great options and definitely ones worth checking out. And the final thing amp-wise for me to mention is it's kind of similar to the Fender Player 2 series in the guitar world. It was that we saw the release of the Boss Katana Generation 3 amps. And I have little to no experience with these. I've tried a few in shops of the new ones. And I've seen a few people saying, was it really worthy of being a Generation 3 as opposed to a Mark 2.5 or something? But definitely worth mentioning in these lists, because the Katana is now an iconic and an incredible amp for first-time amp buyers and not first-time amp buyers as well. I don't know if you've tried them, the Generation 3.
I haven't actually played a Katana since the version 1 came out, so I'm quite behind on my Katanas. But
okay.
But I did like the one I tried years ago, maybe like 8 years ago now. But I had good impressions of it. I remember it sounding and feeling pretty good.
Yeah, the Katanas have always been, you know, really decent, solid, dependable amps. I mean, I don't think anyone's buying them with the expectation that they're going to be the world's best sounding amp. But in terms of feature sets, in terms of the channels that you have on offer for the tones you can make, in terms of the built-in effects and the sort of ever-improving access to the tone editing app if you want to use it and stuff like that, they are just a really cool option. And I would recommend them to anybody who's looking for kind of to take their next amp journey step, whether they're a beginner or someone who's got an amp or two already and they're looking for a flexible catch-all sort of an option. Yeah, definitely makes sense. Yeah, you know, if you're starting out this year and you've got the budget for a Fender Player 2 guitar and a Katana 3, imagine that as a starting rig.
Yeah, it's, again, to go back to what we said earlier, it's crazy what you can get for your money now.
Yeah, exactly. Great time to start playing guitar, kids.
You don't need to spend a ton of money to sound good anymore.
Nope, you absolutely don't. As we prove every year at the Gear Street event with our affordable rig
and
stuff.
Also, we actually hit our price target this year for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. Commendable, I would say.
I mean, you could literally buy one of these for like £180, one of those HSS Harley Bentons for £160, And then you have, for just over £300, a rig that you can get any sound out of and gig with.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. You can gig with it, you can record with it, you can practice with it. That's got a looper in it, so you can do that sort of stuff with it too. It's like, yeah, crazy what you can do.
You literally don't need anything else anymore. So everything else we've talked about is completely pointless.
Yeah. But actually, I guess, hearing your choices and putting them together with mine, and these are just our two, by the way. I mean, there are many more opinions and videos out there. It proves that 2024 has again been another really good year for guitar gear. And I think particularly on the affordable end of the spectrum.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
Yeah. So that's
I
gear.
do think that in terms of like the pricing tiers of guitar gear, I mean, like I said earlier, high-priced gear is always going to be good. So realistically, when you're spending, $3,000 on a guitar, it has to be a good product because it's $3,000. If you're going out and buying a Friedman amp, Friedman amps are 2,500 plus. They have to be good amps. So there's not really a lot the big companies can do really to innovate, I think, at this stage, other than just offer great products. Where the real innovation is and the real growth in the market is in these sort of sub £500 brands. The stuff that Harley Benton are doing, like Levinson, the potential for what Yamaha can do in that price range. That's where all the big innovation is going to be, is really opening up that end of the market.
Yes.
And like amp companies getting into that world as well. That's going to be interesting. Like companies like Blackstar are making really affordable valve amps under £500-600. And we're starting to see other companies go the same way. So yeah, I think that's always going to be the thing. I think year on year, I think this is where we're going to see the most growth in the industry, is every year we're going to be more impressed by the cheap stuff. Because the expensive stuff will always be impressive because it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with that. And I would add on to this the fact that I think that there are still relevant artists out there who are going to help us in terms of gear decisions. And I've got kind of a little case study for how this could work, which also ties into your more affordable gear thing. And that's Jack White. We've mentioned him before in this. White Stripes, Jack White, incredible guitar player, incredible artist and musician. And in early 2024 at the NAMM show, he released, in collaboration with his Third Man company and Donna, a really affordable, Chinese company, the Triple Threat multi-effects pedal. And that brought these two worlds together. And it's an awesome pedal. It does 3 great sounds. And that is, I think, €99, $99, £99, something like that. So another great way to bring people into the world of guitar who haven't experienced it yet. But if you're a Jack White fan, you can progress and buy more and more of his products. And I think I listed this year that he's had the Panoverb amp signature with Fender, like this stereo tremolo crazy amp. He's had the triple caster Tele, the Telecaster with 3 pickups and a kill switch and so on. He's got the triple sonic, Acoustasonic guitar as well.
I haven't seen that one yet.
No.
Okay.
No. And just recently, he had a collaboration with Eventide pedals for the Knife Drop pedal. Which is like an octave synthy fuzz sort of thing. Insanely awesome sounding pedal. But again, they've harnessed the power of Jack White as this incredible inspirational musician, this sort of unique guitar player. And that, I'm sure, is making money, selling stuff, working well for companies and for people who buy gear. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That's where the growth is. And if we can get more, good guitar players coming through in 2025 and keep the industry going and all that, I'm all for that, because, the guitar is not as famous as it once was as an instrument, and it needs to be. Yeah. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on 2024. Any thoughts on you about what might come in 2025? Any wishes for gear? I know that you've got that top secret pedal just under the camera there, but anything else you can think of? What's coming? I'm going to echo your thought and say I would like to see Yamaha do an affordable Pacifica, like in that kind of Element vein. I'd be very interested to see that. I'm very interested to see where the next evolution of modeling is going to go. Because I think, obviously, like Neural DSP shook things up over the last couple of years with the Quad Cortex. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some advancements to things like Helix,
where Line 6 are going to take it to that next level, because for me, Line 6 have always been like they're the pioneers of the modeling world. They've been there since day one. So I wouldn't be surprised if they've got something under their belt ready for 2025. Interested also to see what happens with amps as well, because obviously, as you said, we're not seeing as many people using big amps anymore. So what's next in that world? That's going to be quite interesting to see.
It is. And I don't worry for the future of amps, but it's getting increasingly easier not to buy a big amp, and not to pay more for solutions. And it's becoming more of a I think most people who will be buying amps like the Friedman PLEX, for example, they're not going to be players who actually need it for a specific, for an efficient purpose. They're not going to need it for playing shows or whatever, because who's playing shows that requires amps like that these days, really? It's the tiny minority.
Yeah.
But it's going to be people who have the money, who want to treat themselves to this incredible slice of mojo, to make themselves feel great when playing the guitar. I'm all for that, and I hope it carries on. Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see where this goes in the next 12 months, because every year things get deeper and deeper. So it's gonna be fun to see. Yeah, exactly. And in terms of specific gear, I think I've already brought up Harley Benton. They've already teased what's coming out next year, so that's going to be exciting. Video showcasing some of that on my channel for anybody who wants to watch that. But some interesting guitars in the pipeline. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I've also seen that Behringer are kind of dipping their toes again into the water of guitar pedals. They've got a very Klon Centaur-esque Klon clone coming. They've got a tone bender, fuzz bender pedal coming, which looks and sounds fantastic in the video. There's the bass Brassmaster, bass octave fuzz, what's coming. And we know that Behringer is a company that is very adept at taking classic circuits and making clones or new versions, whatever, of them. Don't need to go into that debate here, but I think that's an interesting route, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming there in 2025 and whether other companies will follow suit in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be Behringer if it wasn't controversial, so it'll be interesting to see how those are perceived when they get launched.
Yeah, exactly, but they'll be cheap. That'll be the thing, and people will buy them. Yeah.
That's it. And again, I think, like anything, there's a use case for it, because you could argue that they're cheap and the quality might not be great, but if it's an entry level or a gateway for people to get into that kind of thing, then, it kind of serves a purpose. You could argue the same for something like this. This is a £50 pedal, which people could say, well, it's kind of copying the sound of a Vox, which it is. But if this £50 pedal then leads someone to say, hey, I really like Voxes, I'm going to go and buy an AC30. That's if it acts as a gateway into a bigger thing, then I agree that it's a positive. It's a positive thing to happen. Yeah,
exactly. Well, one thing's for sure, 2025 is going to be an exciting year for guitar gear.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're still watching, if you've made it up to this point, I just want to thank you for going through with us. Don't know how long this is going to be, but it's going to be a feature-length video, this one, that's for sure.
I think we've just broken our record. Just.
Yeah. Close to 2 hours, I think we might be. But anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed it. Links to everything is going to be down in the description, and links to Leigh, of course. But I want to end this video on one final awesome new thing that happened in 2024, and that's the fact that you've got original music out there. You formed a new band. Plug it right now.
Thank you very much for mentioning it. Yeah, so I've been working with a friend of mine to write some songs over the last couple of years, and we released our first single a couple of weeks ago at the time of shooting this video. The band is called Bad Deeds, and we've got a single called Idle Hands, which is out on all the usual places: Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, everywhere else you consume music content.
Indeed. Fantastic song, and there's more to come in 2025. So stick around for that.
Lots more.
Make sure you sub to Leigh if you haven't already. Like and sub for me as well, if you wouldn't mind. But thanks once again, Leigh, for joining me, for spending the time. And we'll see you in another video.
Bye for now. See you next December.